Y'all to the second week of Héroes de Los Ángeles. And I'm really glad to have a couple of you here along with me and Javier to discuss our thoughts on what it means to be a hero. So, kind of like last time, I wanted to actually start off our discussion for today with, again, the question of how do you define a hero? Especially since at least the two of you that are on the call right now, been thinking a lot and contemplating what it means to be a hero and who you want to honor through this workshop series. So for you, how would you define a hero? And feel free to jump in, either one of you, Javier included.
Yeah, so having missed last week, but kind of catching up, right? Again, I really do, because it's like, it's hard for me to write about someone, I guess real, someone close. I don't know why. I don't know why it's hard for me. But as I've been thinking about it, I think a hero, again, like last week, is like that northern compass. I love that definition. Someone you aspire to kind of be like, and then also kind of like someone that you look up to. And it just like whatever you're into, and like that person serves as a guide. I think that's a pretty cool, not saving lives or something like fictional, or like down to earth. I think I like that definition of.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that it was Mauricio, I believe, last week that sort of used that definition as that northern compass. So it is. I think it is a good way to think about a hero versus a superhero, which we can discuss, I think, a little bit more. But having looked at the people that have been listed so far in the questionnaire as people's heroes, I'm curious to know, why select those people. And Javier, you wanted to discuss why you chose the hero that you're hoping to honor through this. And I'm really curious, what was your logic behind choosing the figure that you chose?
Yeah, so I didn't rewatch the video, just what we talked about last week. I'm just going off my bad memory, but I remember somebody brought something up, and I think the consensus was like, yeah, let's focus on a real person, whether it's a family member or whatever, someone in the community, or so it's like, yeah, I'd want to write about a fictional character. But so right off the top, I'm going on the list, and I'm thinking, of course, my parents, mom, dad, brother, other people. But then it's like, thinking what you talked about, like, okay, let's talk about the hero's journey. Let's talk about their positive stuff. Let's talk about their faults. Let's talk about and yeah, it's like for me, I guess it's just growing up, right? Like be very private, keep the family business in the house. So it's like, I was thinking of a particular person. I'm thinking, well, and there's nothing wrong. Everybody has struggles. It's something embarrassing. But yeah, there's something about me. I can't, I don't want to sit there and expose this person because it's, if they're still living, right? Like the way I look at it, I know it's weird. It's not my business to put their life story out there, which is weird because, we would not have biographies if we all thought that way. So I go, let me pull the camera, let me pull the spotlight off a relative, as much as I like to honor them in a public forum. And let me just, look at a hero, because I'm an artist, I'm a creative person. So obviously I have a lot of people, those Northern stars from all over, comics, film, writers, performers, whatever. And I'm just being very honest. It's like, I thought of all the different things, and I go, Mil Máscaras, the Mexican masked wrestler, started, I think, in the 60s. And, he hasn't passed away, thankfully, but pretty much retired because like 70, 80-year-old man. But I go, honestly, when I saw him as a kid, when I'm watching Lucha Libre on the Spanish channels here at home, and then he shows up, like, wow, that was the first time I saw a masked wrestler. And then you learn they're from Mexico, and it's a big thing over there. And the way he was built, he was actually very built like a superhero, much more than Santo. I mean, not to get all geeky here. Santo was just more barrel chested. Mascaras was built like a Mike Zeck Captain America drawing, but you can look that up later. Anyway, so for me, like, God, this guy shows up in a mask. Like, well, wow, I love comics at the time, but you see like a real, like, oh, these wrestlers, they actually wear the mask in public in Mexico. They go eat with it. They don't take it off. No one knows who they are.
Mm-hmm.
So as a kid, that totally fuels your superhero fantasy thing, right? But at the same time, no, these are performers, entertainers, whatever you want to call it. So, and the thing about Mil Máscaras compared to the other ones, he's called Mil Máscaras because he's 1,000 masks, not of 1,000 masks. So he has a certain mask design, but he has a ton of them, and the print always changes, leopard print, whatever. And he had costumes that would match. So he would be the only wrestler whose attire would change, every match or wherever. And he had a matching cape, very flamboyant, very artistic. But he just stood out with all the wrestlers. And the thing about his designs on the costumes is sometimes he'd walk in like an Aztec warrior with the whole headdress.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes he'd have like beautiful Aztec designs on the mask. Sometimes he'd come in like what do you call the charo, the mariachi outfit?
Mm-hmm.
Like a spangled black with a matching hat and a mask. And as a kid, it's like, wow, this guy is, I don't know if I processed it like that as a kid, but I realized he's showing a lot of Mexican culture. He's very proud of his Mexican culture. Again, it's a different level than the other wrestlers. I mean, they were all proud to be Mexican, right? That's Santo and everybody. But Mascaras through his art. So I guess he's very artistic. It's the first time I ever said that phrase about him. So that probably appealed to me too as an artist, because I was not going to become a wrestler. So I can really relate to him as an artist. So to me, like he was like Mexico's Captain America. He waved the flag, he wore the flag. So it's kind of a mythic hero for me, the approach I'm taking. But I think mythic heroes are just as important. It's still a Northern Star for me. It's still something like, it's a big influence on maybe creating my own characters later. But to be proud of being Mexican, being proud of the actual culture,
mm-hmm.
and exhibiting it creatively, artistically, visually. So that's why I'm going to be writing and drawing about Mil Máscaras.
That's awesome. And I think that it's really cool that you're looking at your particular hero choice from the lens of, the personal impact that he had on you, but also the fact that he's a cultural symbol, and probably a hero that is venerated in a lot of different areas, but really not that much here in the United States. So, because I mean, it's Mexican wrestling, right? Mexican mask wrestling is a unique thing to our culture, and not something that you see very often here in the same way, and much less as a person that, or as a figure that represents our culture so strongly. So yeah, I see it a lot as like almost like a level of empowerment, that he instilled in you. So it's a good choice for sure.
Thanks. And what's great about it, because it's not, it's not like a comic book made by a corporation. It was him. It was
mm-hmm.
his ideas. He didn't have a management team. There wasn't like a team Mascaras, and they all figured, hey, do this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, his name is Aaron Rodriguez, I believe. He decided, hey, I'm going to go in the ring. I want to wrestle, but this is what I want to do. This is the motif I want.
Yeah.
So, he brought that into existence. So.
Right. So awesome. Thanks for that detailed explanation. San Juanita, you had just shared with us that your particular hero that you're hoping to write about is your dad. And I think that's also, very, very good way of defining your hero, right? Is looking at the person that probably had the biggest influence on you. And you were sharing that you had never really shared your work with your dad before. And I think that, to sort of share a little backstory on me, with me, it's actually the opposite. It's my mom who's never read nor seen me perform my poetry. And it's only ever been my dad, who growing up for me, he was the last person that would ever show up for anything. Because, work and sort of the family dynamic, so it's kind of cool to hear that that's something that you're hoping to do for your dad. If you don't mind sharing those, San Juanita, like what was the inspiration for choosing your dad, and why now?
Actually, give me a second. It's in the closet in the bag. There's an orange box, a black box. I'm sorry, my son's getting a gift for a girl.
It's okay.
And he needs something from me. But my dad, I know so much about him. And, little stories here and there and poems there and there. And there's a story to this. My dad, I've always seen my dad, of course, I think like hopefully every child, he's always been, I guess someone that I can lean on.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as I was growing up, my dad was never home. And a lot of the times we see that as something bad. But there was a time when I started seeing it in a different way. I started seeing it more as, this is what I'm learning from my father. My dad was not out there. Maybe he did not fulfill everything my mom wanted, because of course, I know that my mom was, he would go out and drink and do all that stuff. But most of the time, he was working.
Mm-hmm.
My dad would get up earlier than everybody. Before I woke up, my dad was already gone. And in the afternoons, I would get home from school and my dad was still not there. He was still working. And so there's something that I wrote about El Café, and I'll share that with you later if there's a chance. But there was something special making El Café. And it was because my dad was going to get home from work. And to me, that was a special thing to do. But of course, I was not trusted with a café, and I'm already telling you the story. And I said I was going to tell you later. But I was never trusted making a café because I was very young. And I look forward to the day when my mom would trust me to make that drink that my dad, the man who's been out working all day, was going to get home to. And the first thing that he's going to ask for is café, right? So and I wrote a poem to that. When I was old enough and I was trusted with that, to me it was an honor. So I started seeing my dad as a very important person, very important, and maybe because my mom had a lot to do with it. My mom had a lot to do with me seeing my dad as the important person in my family. Mm-hmm. And so making the coffee was an honor. So I saw my dad as a hero. I saw my dad as I was going to prepare this power drink for this powerful man. Mm-hmm. Not because he was this big, strong and rich, wealthy man, no. But because this man was like, to me, he was a know-it-all. Mm-hmm. There's nothing in this life that my dad cannot do. And I'm not saying that he can physically do it, but my dad will figure out everything and anything. My dad, getting up early, to me, he taught me to be responsible. He taught me that, responsibilities come no matter what you did the night before. No, even if I went party, I knew that I have a responsibility, and that was that day. Today is another day, and I have to do what I have to do that morning. So my dad, we would stay up late or whatever. He would drink and sleep 2-3 hours, and he was up to go to work the following day because he would tell us. Mm-hmm. La responsabilidad, I don't know if you understand Spanish, Roberto. La responsabilidad es muy diferente a lo que has hecho la noche anterior. So I learned all of that. I learned responsibility. I learned to make people rely on me, reliable, because my dad was that strength that I learned, because I think I shared with you last Thursday or last Wednesday that I was a single mom and I had to be responsible for 4 lives. Mm-hmm. And my kids were from 2 to 14 years old. And I had to raise those kids by myself. And all that, I learned it from my father. My dad never gave in or gave up. He even had to go work, because I used to live in Mexico. Mm-hmm. And my dad, he would come to work here in the U.S. a whole week, a whole month, and but he would always go back to it. I don't remember ever my mom saying, "There's no food," because we were not poor. We were very poor, but we always had food because my dad always, I don't know, he did wonders, magic. I don't know what he did, but see all these things. Plus, I learned my human characteristics. I got it from my dad. My dad is he's very loving. I'm very loving. Well, I think I'm a very caring, generous person. And I think I'm also a very kind person. And all of that, I learned it from my dad because my dad used to tell me when I was going to university, he would tell me, "Mijita, doesn't matter how many titles you have. Everybody deserves respect. Even if they have no titles." That's what he would tell me. And he, so to me, that's very true. I've never said, "Oh, I'm a teacher, and you're,
Yeah.
Never put anybody down because of anything. My dad taught me to be human, and he didn't have an education. He just went up to second grade, I believe. My dad knows how to read, and my dad knows how to write. And he taught, of course, I guess through life. But you know what? One of the things that we do every day, as a family, is thank God to the internet and the 2020 and all this. We do a rosary every day. And you know what? My dad prays with us. And to me, that's a big reason to join the rosary.
Yeah.
Because I think my dad, his memory is still very sharp. He's 83. And I'm just like there, like just enjoying hearing my dad, because he's been such a role model to me. And I know a role model to my kids too. So I don't know, he's an awesome man. And I think he deserves everything that I write for him, honestly.
Yeah.
And I think I've done my time, sorry.
No, not at all. I think that everything that you shared is very relevant. Javier, you have something to add?
Yeah. So I'm sorry. The name is Janine. I see it on the
Janie, San Juanita.
Okay. Oh, Janie, your mic's not on.
So I am Janie, but my real name is San Juanita, but a lot of people call me Janie. You know Janie for San Juanita?
Okay.
But you can call me San Juanita or Janie, whatever is beautiful for you.
No, San Juanita's beautiful. When you're talking about your father, there's certain things that you said that could literally be my dad. You said your dad had second grade education. My dad went up to the third grade. He would work this weird, I don't know what they call this shift, swing shift or something. Like he'd come home from work, at, 3 in the morning, right? Go to bed. And I remember I was probably in high school. The phone rings. Hello? Hi, this is blah, 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 blah. Is your father there? And I'm like, Mom, cover the phone. It's Dad's work. They want him to go turn into work right now. Like, they need help. So she gave my dad the phone, and my dad wakes up after 2 hours. Okay, all right, I'll be there. Someone didn't go in, so my dad, yeah, I'd say I'd hang up the phone. I'm sick there. I'm not going in. You get up and go back to work. I don't know how men like that, where that comes from. So maybe it's just old school Mexican because I don't have that. I don't have that. So yeah, thanks for sharing some of the things you said. Like, wow, that's my dad. That's my dad. That's my dad. It's something in the generation. My dad's 93. Thank God. Him and my mom's still around. Yeah, I don't know. That's a special thing that those guys came up with. Something in the water or something. But so I'm glad you're right about your dad. Like, I cannot wait to see that.
I try to show that to my children, but nope. What happened, like you said. But I think I picked up a lot from my dad. And I try to instill all those things in my children, like knowing that they have a responsibility, but I don't know. Something's going on with this millennial. Sorry, with all due respect. I don't know if you're a millennial. You're a millennial, right?
Technically, I'm not. I'm part of that generation that's kind of in between the Gen X and millennial. I forgot what we were called. Something like Zennial.
You're an exennial, Luis. An exennial.
Exennial, yeah.
My most of my kids, 3 of my kids are millennials, so
yeah.
They've got something of that generation.
Yeah.
Well, let's not be too hard on them because I'm way older and I don't reach up to my dad's status of, tenacity and stuff like that either.
Yeah, these are all.
I have a different stubbornness. So,
Yeah, these are all like individual qualities that we're discussing, and they're not universal. It's not generational. It's just sometimes it's the qualities that we see. And I think the thing that I wanted to say after reviewing everyone's submissions is that most of the people that were selected, they were selected because they instilled pride in the individual writing about them. And I think that that's really important. And it's definitely a very, very important part of the lesson for today is that sense of pride that a person feels for their subject. And so we'll go ahead and I think transition into the handout. If in case you didn't see it, but up on the Google Classroom is the handout for today. And I'm going to be sharing my screen so everyone can see it as well. But today we're going to discuss the ode. And San Juanita, you mentioned, that you wrote an ode thanks to one of the other classes that you're taking. But I think that it's good for us to sort of know some of the origins of the ode and where it comes from. And so here we have the definition for the ode itself. As you can see, it comes from the Greek aidin. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it's aidin, or spelled Aeidin. And it meant or means to sing or chant, and belongs to the long and varied tradition of lyric poetry. And I can explain a little bit more what lyric poetry is after this, but originally the ode was accompanied by music and dance, and later reserved by the Romantic poets to convey their strongest sentiments. And keep that in mind, it's their strongest sentiments. The ode can be generalized as a formal address to an event, a person, or a thing not present. So that's our official definition of the ode. I'm also going to copy and paste it over into our chat so you can reference it. But for you guys that are new to the ode as a form, what is it about the definition that already started maybe formulating ideas in your mind? How do you interpret that particular definition of the ode? What do you get from this? And feel free to jump in with whatever comes to mind.
To me, like an ode is like una manera de honrar,
Mm-hmm.
Or you could even say venerar, maybe. I don't know if venerar is
Yeah.
Something that is someone that is there to be from the big crowd up here, like that's how I see it.
Yeah, it is. It is about venerating the subject, for sure. Right. Javier, did you have something that you wanted to add?
No, I was just trying to figure out how to look at the definition again, but because I got to my iPad, I was trying to figure out how to access it on my desktop. But well, you mentioned like you highlighted thing about the strongest reaction?
Sentiments, yeah.
Sentiments, yeah. So yeah, your hero does elicit a strong sentiment from you. I mean, it's just like this. It's almost like you want to talk about them. Like again, why did I pick out of all the people I could have picked? Like, why did we pick that one person? We must obviously want to say something about them and want to share it with people. and maybe educate people. Like in my case, like you said, Mil Máscaras, maybe people won't know who he is, or they don't know much about wrestling or Mexican. So anyway, yeah, it's a desire to educate people, give an idea, to people, and give the hero their spotlight. I mean, it's not like they don't need a spotlight. I mean, that's why in Máscara's case, he's famous throughout the world, But it's just really, you want to share his story, and I guess I want to share why he was important to me, and maybe in the writing, show what I ended up doing with that influence, So.
Exactly. Bobby, did you have any thoughts?
So I've taken a few poetry classes in my day, and like what I recall of the ode is that like it's like the way we interpreted back then, or in that one particular course, it was sort of like, how they say like imitation is the best form of flattery. So we would write an ode to a certain piece, follow the stanza, and kind of just like like this is an ode to like said piece, and like kind of like follow the stanza and stuff. But I mean I like this definition where it's like it's kind of like what comes to mind. It's like the people who make like songs, or like I know in the last class you mentioned like the word corridos in Spanish, right? But like of like these folk heroes, like these like local legends. So that's what comes to my mind, and that kind of fits with my the hero that I'm gonna write about. I haven't mentioned it, but I think so. I'm based in Chicago, and I think I'm gonna write about Congressman Jesus Chuy Garcia. I had the pleasure of working for his campaign this season through a fellowship. But I think that he is an unsung hero that kind of like goes somewhat unrecognized. And I think I'd like to, in my, I guess, ode to him, right? Like I like to kind of like make the rest of the Western portion of the U.S. kind of like, familiarize themselves with like is and why he should be, a hero to some, other than myself.
Yeah, and I think that one of the common things, like I said, was that the people that have been selected so far are people that really instill pride in the person, and we've been talking about this a little bit in the Conchas y Café class the last few weeks, but the people that we select says a lot about who we are as well. And so I think that it's very, very actually important that we recognize our own sort of role in venerating this hero. That's why the Romantic poets in particular, during the Romantic period, they were the ones that sort of revived the ode as a form. And they used it as a way to, I don't want to say be sappy, but to really, really discuss their emotional investment in the person, the place, or the thing that they were writing about. And so our example for today comes from basically that time period, maybe like the tail end of it, I want to say. It's a poem that was written by Alexander Posey. If you're not familiar with Alexander Posey and who he is, there's a small little bio here on our handout. Alexander Posey was born the 3rd of August in 1873 and passed away the 27th of May in 1908. Alexander Posey, that's his English name. I'm pretty sure, I don't know, actually, I couldn't find what his Native American given name is, but he was a Muskogee Creek poet. So he himself was Native American, indigenous to our country. He was also a journalist, a humorist, and a politician, and the founder of the, hopefully I'll say this right, the El Faula Indian Journal, which was the first Native American daily newspaper. So he himself is a pretty awesome person. And he wrote this ode to Sequoia. And I'm sure you may have heard at some point the name Sequoia before. But I'm just kind of curious before we get into the poem here. how many of you have actually heard of the individual sequoia? I'm not talking about the sequoia trees. No one? So a little background here. In doing research and preparing for this lesson, I actually, I found the poem, and then I wanted to make sure that I understood who Sequoia was before we discussed who, Alexander Posey's poem and why he wrote it about Sequoia. So Sequoia is the indigenous name of the man known as George Guess. George Guess was a Cherokee individual. He was part of the Cherokee Nation and was a little bit before Alexander Posey's time. In the mid 1800s, if I remember correctly, Sequoia actually was the first person to develop a writing and reading system for the Cherokee Nation. So before him, no one in the Cherokee Nation had any kind of writing system to be able to record their stories. It was purely oral tradition. So nobody before him had ever taken on the task of writing down the language of the Cherokee. And so, it's pretty astonishing because, he himself was illiterate. He did not know English. He did not know how to read and write. He basically taught himself how to read and write by creating his own letters so that he could actually then go and teach other people from his nation, from his indigenous nation, how to read and write. And, funny little thing that I read about him is that his wife actually thought that he was practicing witchcraft. And so she burned his first documents where he, created the letter forms that he ended up adapting into his 86 letter alphabet. And it took him a while to be able to convince the other Cherokee people that he was creating something to benefit them. The very first person that actually learned how to read and write in Cherokee was his daughter, Ayoka. And so his daughter helped him basically spread the word of literacy in the Cherokee Nation. And thanks to him, he was able to actually unite both the Eastern Cherokee tribe and the Western Cherokee tribe. And the Cherokees ended up having a higher literacy rate than even the English settlers that surrounded them. So the Cherokee people, to this day, I believe, still actually use the writing system that Sequoia created. So it's pretty astonishing. But he was just, your average man that was like, hey, there's a problem that needs some fixing. And to this day, we still use his name, Sequoia, to talk about the trees, and more. So that's a little background on Sequoia and why he has an ode written to him. So hopefully that sets us up for our reading here. Now, do I have a volunteer that'd like to take on the reading of the ode to Sequoia? Anybody?
Yeah, I'll take it if you want.
Sure.
Just read the start with the names.
Yeah, you could just start with the names.
All right.
And I'll scroll.
The names of Waiti and Bodenat, the valiant warrior and gifted sage, and other Cherokees may be forgotten, but thy name shall descend to every age. The mysteries enshrouding Cadmus's name cannot obscure thy claim to fame. The people's language cannot perish, nay, when from the face of this great continent inevitable doom hath swept away. The last memorial, the last fragment of tribes, some scholar learned shall pour upon thy letters, seeking ancient lore. Some bard shall lift a voice in praise of thee. In moving numbers, tell the world how men scoffed at thee, hissed charged with lunacy, and who could not give enough honor when, at length, in spite of jeers of want and need, thy genius shaped a dream into a deed. By cloud-clapped summits in the boundless west, or mighty river rolling to the sea, where'er thy footsteps led thee on that quest, unknown rest thee, illustrious
Cherokee. Excellent. Thank you, Bobby.
Yeah.
So, first of all, what do you guys think about the poem?
Well, it's always, for me, it's always a step or two to decipher, that archaic English. Like,
yeah,
I'm sure that's meant common with a lot of people. So I'll probably have to reread it again on my own. But Bobby did a good job with it.
Yes, Bobby did do a good job reading it. And I guess just for the sake of since I believe all of us here are bilingual, why don't I go ahead and read it in Spanish? Because I have found personally that sometimes reading it in Spanish, since it's my first language, sometimes actually helps me understand the English. And just like a little quick note, I actually was the one that translated it too. So the translation plus doing it in Spanish actually helped me sort of understand the poem a little bit better too. So, aquí les va. Oda a Sequoia. Los nombres de Waitie y Boudinot, el guerrero valiente y el dotado sabio, y otros Cherokee serán olvidados, pero tu nombre llegará a cada época. Los misterios cubriendo el nombre de Cadmo no pueden ocultar tu derecho a la fama. El lenguaje del pueblo jamás perecerá, no, cuando de la cara de este gran continente la muerte se ha llevado el último monumento, el último fragmento de tribus. Algún erudito estudiado atento leerá tus palabras, buscando sabiduría antigua. Algún bardo levantará una voz en alabanza de ti. En piezas emotivas contarán cómo gente se burlaba de ti, te abucheaban, te cobraron loco, y que no supieron dar suficientes honores cuando, a pesar de las burlas, deseos y necesidad, tu genialidad formó de un sueño a un hecho. Por cimas forradas de nubes en el oeste sin límite, o fuerte río rodando hacia el mar, por donde tus pasos te llevaron en aquella búsqueda desconocida, descansa, ilustre Cherokee.
It sounds a lot more badass in Spanish, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. So having heard it in Spanish and hopefully gotten a little more sense of it, what do you guys think of the poem?
Well, it kind of reminds me of what we're doing, where it talks about, the original two people, struggling to get something accomplished against all odds, against ridicule, whatever, and they'll later be written about. They'll later, their acts going to be recognized by people who will write about them later. Which is basically what you're asking us to do, is take someone who's done something remarkable or whatever, and then, write it down related to the masses out there. So that's what I get out of it, like the relationship to the class we're doing here with you, and then the substance of that poem.
Yeah, that's definitely, I think, part of it, right? I wanted to select something that would inspire you all to feel like, what you write is gonna have a long-lasting impact for sure. What else did you all note about the poem? Is there anything in particular that made you feel, a certain kind of way about the poem?
So I wanted to add something.
Mm-hmm.
Because you said that he did this because of the history you gave us. He did this time after, right? That he had lived sometime before.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds to me like he's rescuing. It sounds like a rescue to me. Because of the way they would sing and talk about him.
Mm-hmm.
I think I mentioned to you, you bring, I know it sounds like you bring somebody out from the big crowd and up here so that people can see them differently. So it sounds to me like you rescued him from this crowd that would see him, que dice que lo abucheaban y no sé qué más.
Mm-hmm.
So he kind of brought him out so that people could see him in a different light.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's definitely a major part of the ode and what the ode is meant to do. The ode is meant to, like you said earlier, es para venerar a un ser, right? It is to lift an individual up and kind of elevate them to a level that maybe other people wouldn't have normally seen. And in the case of Sequoia, people might not have been even aware that this individual Sequoia was responsible for, actually creating this writing form for the Cherokee people. So, and there's a little bit of a mention of that in the poem about how, he was kind of called crazy, and that he had this dream and that he turned that dream of creating a writing form for the Cherokee people into a reality. So some of his acts are also added in there. Other thoughts, Javier?
Well, it's interesting because when you were talking about, people thought you were crazy. I mean, that usually happens with somebody who's doing something new and different because it's just different from the crowd.
Mm-hmm. So
like you don't get praised normally. Like, oh, you're innovative. Like, oh, you're crazy. Get back in line. Don't stand out. I mean, that's like age old. That's always been a human condition, I think. Maybe sometimes they are crazy. It's something really bad, but if it's just something that they're doing, they're innovative, or they come home after working a 12-hour shift and 2 hours sleep, they go back to work. They're not crazy. They're just like, hey, it's got to get done. They need somebody. So, getting ridiculed, getting questioned, getting fingers pointed at you. Maybe later on, people then start writing about you, like, oh, you know what? This guy was just fighting for civil rights, or this guy was, she was trying to do something to help other people, but wasn't recognized at the time because everybody likes, we all got to stay in the group. Once you get out of that group, people are going to point fingers at you. So.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that all of the heroes that everyone is looking forward to writing about kind of share. There's this sort of determination that is apparent in the way that you're all describing these individuals, including even Mil Máscaras. The little bit that I know about Mil Máscaras' personal story, I think that he did have to actually overcome a lot to be able to actually become a wrestler that was so as famous as he was. So his journey was not an easy one from the little bit that I know.
He's one of the few wrestlers I know of that gets the particular criticism of, so this is very inside wrestling geeky talk, but people accuse of not putting the other opponent over, meaning, so there's two guys that are wrestling, they all got their moves, right? So if I got like the double axe chop, whatever, and I do it on a wrestler that's supposed to like fall down, like, oh, that really devastated me. The criticism of Máscaras was he wouldn't try to sell the other guy's moves. Like the guy would do the super move on Máscaras and he would just kind of brush it off. So, you're breaking a little of the rules, and it's not that makes you a better hero, but maybe it's a little selfish too, but he was just focused on his side of it, really. So it's interesting, like you're saying, everybody gets criticized about something. And that could be a negative, it could be vanity, right? He didn't want to look like he was affected by that move. So, and like you said, heroes they're fallible. I mean, they have little foibles, so that might be the thing I might write about as far as like the vanity part, which you mentioned before in your story about your father. So,
Yeah. And so I think that those are kind of like the things that maybe are downplayed a little bit in an ode. In the ode by Alexander Posey about Sequoia, he does say, people jeered you, people thought you were crazy, but they were also incapable at some point of giving you enough honor and praise after you worked so hard to turn your dream into a reality. I'm sort of paraphrasing, but that's basically what the ode is saying about Sequoia. And so, as you sort of begin thinking about your heroes and an ode that you might want to write for your hero, think about the fact that the purpose of the ode is to sort of be overly sentimental, right, and to really sort of highlight the pride, the sense of pride that you might feel in knowing about your particular hero, and maybe even a little bit of why that hero has affected you, and your community and your sense of maybe even pride in yourself. So those are some of the things that you may want to highlight in your sentimental ode to your hero. And ultimately, because heroes are fallible, because they are ultimately human, you may also want to put in contrast to that, maybe underplaying it a little bit, but you may want to put, something along the lines of, this was a way, and this was a challenge that you had to overcome, whether it was their personal challenge or, an external force that was trying to keep that hero down. Those are the kinds of things that by contrast, that's how you venerate a hero. It does ultimately have to have a little bit of a balance. So you may start your ode kind of like the way that Alexander Posey started it, by saying, yes, these other people exist, but they're not going to be remembered the way that you will be remembered. Other people might have treated you this way. Other people might have, pushed you down, or your own, pride and not wanting to admit defeat may have cost you some status at some point. But, you accomplished this because you had this amazing talent, or because you had this ambition that, was never going to be stopped. And so then you build up to, how that maybe affected you and how that affected the community. And now, you would close out your ode by saying, I wish you all the best. I hope that you are remembered forever. And just sort of closing that loop of the hero's story. So, does anybody have any questions about, the purpose of the ode, or how you might want to start your own? I basically gave you a structure right now, but it's sort of a loose structure. Javier?
And for the assignment, you're giving people, you were going to give different examples. Besides the ode, there was a couple other ones.
Yeah.
You were going to show us, and then the person could pick which one of those they want to use, or you want everyone to do each one as an exercise.
You basically have the option, right? So, this is one technique that you can use. I can tell you right now that next week we're going to cover the corrido. So the corrido is building on the ode as a form. So the ode is the basis, right? It's the oldest version of a corrido. But the corrido is a little bit more complex. And so if you decide that you want to write an ode, and then maybe adapt it later to become a corrido, I would suggest, kind of look at what Alexander Posey did and understand that that is sort of the basis for what ends up becoming a corrido. So you can begin formulating your ideas now for this upcoming week. So good question, Javier. Yeah, and ultimately, go ahead, San Juanita.
¿Y quién va a poner la música? ¿Me vas a regañar tú, Luis?
Well,
I mean, because that's what a corrido, I mean, it's Or you're just thinking of the lyrics, just that.
Believe it or not, the corrido doesn't always have to have music, just like the ode, right? So the original ode normally had music and dance. That was a part of it. But a corrido, yeah, nah. But the classic corrido, the original corrido, didn't always have music either.
Oh, okay. Well, I just know that with the music.
In this class, you're gonna get a nice piece of art, though.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. But I was gonna say, feel free to write, one of each of the different forms that we're discussing. So last week, just to be clear, the assignment was to complete the questionnaire, but also to begin working on that little biography about your hero. It could be done as a short story, so that is an option if you want to include that in the final anthology. For this week, it is the ode, and so you're welcome to begin formulating an ode to your hero. Next week, it will be the corrido, so it'll take your ode and give it even more structure. For this week, the ode is, I'm letting you sort of determine the structure that you want to do. It doesn't have to be in any kind of iambic pentameter or, in stanzas that are formal the way that Alexander Posey did it. It doesn't even have to be in that classic English language style of oh, great, such and such. Thy deeds are so great. All right. So, any last questions that anybody has here for today? No? All right. Well, I'll be posting this video up on YouTube for everybody that didn't get a chance to join us for today for the live session. And I'll also kind of create like an assignment section for you guys to post an ode if you want to get feedback on it in the Google Classroom. Javier?
Yeah, I just wanted to add or say that, just this last hour or so we're talking, you've kind of given me a new definition or something to add to a definition of a hero, and it's someone who can inspire pride in you. I never thought about that for a hero. Like I figured they give you a role model, they give you advice, but yeah, I mean, when you can instill pride in somebody, man, that's amazing. It's like that you two song. They can take your life, but they can never take your pride. So if you can give a person some pride, wow. It's like, you're giving them a lot. Yeah. So.
Yeah. It gives, it's about almost like giving people a sense of purpose. A hero can oftentimes do that. They can inspire purpose in you. That purpose is probably based on a sense of pride. It's based on a sense of empowerment. So heroes do a lot, and it's really not that different from, like a mentor or a teacher. Your hero can be anybody, really. Anybody in your life that has done that for you, that's probably a hero and a person worth celebrating. Bobby, did you have any questions or comments?
No, I think again, I really love these definitions because again, I did have trouble, right? Because just like with choosing my hero, but once I kind of just like really thought about it, it's like, no, I think I made the right choice. This is what I'm going to talk about.
Excellent.
So these definitions are really helpful.
Excellent. Good.
Hey, Louis.
Yes.
So what do you think about? Because I brought it up earlier. What do you think about this thought of like you don't want to write, not writing about someone who's alive or still around because you don't want like you want to kind of venerate them. Like you don't feel comfortable putting them in the spotlight. I'm just curious what your thought was about that.
I think that's going to be really dependent on how much you want to talk about your hero, in the sense of like the challenges that they had to overcome and that kind of thing, and their fallibility, because remember, ultimately, they're human. So it's good to sort of show that contrast that yes, they may have not always been perfect, but they overcame that imperfection to still be a person that instills pride in me. That might actually make them that much stronger of a hero. But this is the purpose of this whole series is to really shine the light on the people that maybe aren't always given that place in our society. So I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a personal choice, and it will really depend on you all as individuals to feel if you're comfortable with writing about a personal hero that is personally related and maybe still alive.
Can I add something to that?
Sure.
So I'm thinking of my father, right? And I'm thinking, my dad, of course, he's bien sentimental. All those things touch me. And I think that if I write, my dog's sick, it's not a collapsed trachea, so you hear it. That's my dog in the background.
Okay.
Anyway, for my dad, let's say anytime that he sees, I think that if I read to him something that I wrote about him, he's gonna feel that his life was worth, I'm thinking that he's gonna feel proud, not as in like, oh my gosh, I did this, but just knowing that his life, was, taught something, taught us something, and I was thinking about what you said about, one of the questions was, how did that influence or something the community? I'm thinking, he raised 8 kids. So imagine if all the 8 kids have this respect for this man, they're probably and hopefully are going to copy this kind of behavior from this man. So that definitely impacts a community, because these 8 kids went and we started working. We're all working. We all have our jobs. Some of us have or the majority have professions. And I think it does definitely impact the community in a great way, because, for example, one of my sisters moved to New York. She's hardworking too. My brother is the border patrol. My brother, another one, is a teacher. And so definitely impact the community, because all of his kids saw this hardworking man, and we all appreciate that. We're very thankful and grateful for my dad, that way. So if I say something positive about him, I think it's just gonna help him feel that whatever he did in life was actually worthwhile. You know what I'm saying?
Totally.
So I do think that I don't know, Javier, if you're saying you don't know if you should say something about this person now that they're alive. I think this is the time. I think in my case, I think this is the time. I don't want to write to my dad when he's gone, when he can't see it, or when I can't read it to him anymore. You know what I'm saying? So maybe I should hurry up. He's 83. We never know.
Yeah.
We never know. I could be gone. You never know. So I think for me, this is the perfect time. And I need to tell him so he knows that whatever he has done in life, it's been all worthwhile. All worthwhile, I think. Again, but that's because he's my personal, my own dad. Mi apa, because I'm going to call him mi apa, the way I call him. Oh, to mi apa, Anyway.
That's exactly what I use.
Yeah.
Apa and ama.
Apa and ama, yep. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, yeah, and I think that, there's a saying of, hay que darle las flores en vida, and yeah, I think that for everyone that is going to be doing a piece on someone that's still alive, I personally would take it as an honor. I would be very humbled if a person were to write something about me that way. And so, yeah, that's I kind of feel like that's the point. That's the point of this series. So, yeah. Now, with that said, unless if there's any last questions or comments, I think we'll call it a session. So yeah, I'll hopefully see you all again next Wednesday. Next Wednesday at 4:30. Keep an eye on the Google Classroom over the next day or so. I'll be posting the video along with the handout in its own separate section where you can upload your ode if you complete one. And I hope you all have a great holiday weekend. So take care, everybody. Have a good one.
Thanks for opening these spaces for us.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Appreciate it. Happy Thanksgiving to you all.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Take care, everybody.
Take care. All. Bye.